Imagine you're boarding a short domestic flight in January 1997. Just an ordinary trip from Cincinnati to Detroit. No frills, no drama, just an hour in the air and back on the ground before dinner. But instead, that flight would end in horror. A nose-first crash into a frozen Michigan field, killing all 29 people on board. And the last words caught on the cockpit recorder, not calm commands or technical jargon, just one raw chilling scream, "Holy stamps, we're gonna F in die." This is the story of Comair Flight 3272. The crash that shook aviation safety, exposed massive flaws in ICE flight procedures, and left behind one of the most haunting cockpit recordings ever captured. So today, we're diving into 10 shocking facts about the crash that changed how airlines think about icy skies forever. Fact 1. The flight was supposed to be routine. It was just a short hop, an Embraer EMB-120 Brasilia carrying 26 passengers, 2 pilots, and a single flight attendant. Barely 45 minutes in the air. But here's the thing about aviation. The most dangerous flights aren't always the long international hauls. Sometimes, it's the ones everyone treats as routine that carry the biggest risks. And speaking of risk, that takes us straight into fact number 2, because the real danger that day wasn't hidden in the passengers, it was clinging silently to the wing. Fact 2. Ice was the invisible killer. The NTSB later concluded the aircraft had ice on its wings. Now, ice might sound harmless, but in aviation, it's a silent assassin. Just a thin layer can disrupt airflow, reduce lift, and send even skilled pilots into a death spiral. In fact, experts compare it to trying to drive with bald tires on black ice. 1 second you're fine, the next, you're out of control. But the crash wasn't just about ice, it was also about what wasn't done to prevent it. And that's where fact number 3 hits hard. Fact 3. The FAA had dropped the ball. The investigation showed that certification standards for icing were outdated, incomplete, and in some cases, totally ignored. The FAA hadn't enforced minimum airspeeds during icy conditions, and airlines like Comair didn't have strict icing protocols in place for the EMB-120. Basically, the regulators who were supposed to protect passengers had left gaping holes wide enough to swallow an entire plane. And when regulators fail, who pays the price? The people in the cockpit. Which brings us to fact number 4. Fact 4. The pilots knew they were in trouble. Captain Dan Carlson and First Officer Kenneth Reese were both experienced, but as they descended toward Detroit, the warnings started piling up. Carlson noticed a low-speed indicator, asked for more power, and just seconds later the plane stalled. The cockpit voice recorder captures panic, alarms blaring, and then that infamous final line, "We're gonna F and die." If you ever doubted that pilots are human beings, this tape proves it. But if you thought that was chilling, wait until you hear what happened outside the cockpit. That's fact number 5. Fact 5. Witnesses watched the plane spin from the sky. People on the ground reported seeing the plane spin once, then nosedive into a frozen field. The impact was so violent it left a 6-foot crater and exploded into a fireball. Imagine standing outside on a cold January evening and watching a plane literally disintegrate in front of your eyes. That image stayed burned into Monroe County for decades. But the crater wasn't the only thing investigators found. Which brings us to fact 6. Fact 6. The flight recorders told a brutal story. Rescuers and NTSB agents dug through wreckage and snow to recover the black boxes, the cockpit voice recorder, and the flight data recorder. Together, they painted a picture of a plane doomed by slow airspeed, retracted flaps, and sudden autopilot disengagement. In other words, the exact recipe for disaster. But here's the kicker. This wasn't the first Embraer EMB-120 to go down, which makes fact 7 downright terrifying. Fact 7. 4 other EMB-120 crashes happened in warm weather. The NTSB noted something strange. Yes, ice was a factor in Flight 3272. but 4 other EMB-120s had crashed in totally different conditions: warm weather, no ice, no snow. That suggested a deeper mechanical or design flaw that hadn't been fully addressed, which means in a way Flight 3272 wasn't just a tragedy, it was a warning sign flashing in neon that had been ignored too many times. And when warning signs are ignored, the blame goes beyond pilots or weather. That's fact number 8. Fact 8. This was systemic failure, not just pilot error. NTSB Chairman James Hall put it bluntly, "Anytime we see an accident like this repeating itself on information we should have already learned, it's an indictment of the whole system." Translation: this wasn't bad luck. This was negligence from the FAA, from manufacturers, from everyone who should have known better. But if you think the aviation system didn't learn, think again. Fact 9 is about how this crash reshaped safety forever. Fact 9. Icing became the new wind shear. In the 1980s, aviation focused on eliminating wind shear accidents. After Flight 3272, icing got the same treatment. Regulations were tightened, training improved, and new technology developed to detect and combat icing. In short, this crash forced aviation to finally take ice as seriously as any other threat. It's the kind of shift that probably saved countless lives in the decades since. And that leads us to the final point, fact number 10. Fact 10. The legacy of Flight 3272 is bittersweet. On one hand, 29 lives were lost in an instant, families shattered, futures stolen. But on the other hand, their death sparked reforms that made flying safer for millions. Aviation is like that. Every mistake is written in blood, but every lesson learned prevents the next tragedy. So next time you board a plane on a snowy day and hear about dicing delays, remember this crash. That delay might just be the reason you land safely. And here's the question for you. Do you think regulators learned enough from Flight 3272, or are there still cracks in the system waiting to be exposed? Drop your thoughts in the comments, I read every single one. If you found this story as gripping as I did, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind history's most shocking moments, and share this video with someone who loves aviation mysteries. Because at 20 feet, nothing is routine, and sometimes the scariest words in the sky are the ones nobody was supposed to hear.